mind control training at 9 years old.
Yeah.
Why did they take you there?
When I met this billionaire, so in 1972, you had the Bilderberg meeting that happened in Belgium. So for that event, Paul van den Boeynants made sure that he probably did many things around there, but basically to please this powerful American that was there for the Bilderberg meeting, he staged a ritual.
And so why would they need to train you, though?
The mind control training, he had plans for me. And, all right, I can say something. He had me in his homes and everything to get me used to the life of the elite so that I would know how to eat, so that I would recognize good clothes, so that I would be comfortable in these environments. And alongside that, we went to on one of the islands on the northeastern coast of the United States and saw there, and this was a Rothschild who was there.
Rothschild.
A Rothschild, yeah.
And is this who you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm saying we were with Evelyn the Rothschild for 1 day only. And it was clear that this billionaire, who you would think is just as powerful as this Rothschild, was not as powerful in the network as he was. And he was asking for permission to make the star that he wanted to make of me. Well, he didn't want to make me into a star. He wanted to make me into an elite sex slave where I would become famous in France. And then with that role, I would attract the most powerful men in the world and I would be able to spy on them for him and so forth.
Is that David Rockefeller?
I'm not saying. I can't say this. All right.
Only reason I say that is because I pulled up the list from 2012 attendees and I went through all the guests on the right that says U.S. from the Bilderberg meeting.
Okay.
Rob, if you go a little bit lower and zoom in and you put U.S., right there, you'll see the names that shows. I know this is...
Just give me a minute. Well, I can't lie, but it's scary. Yeah, might as well. Okay, there you go.
You've never talked about this.
I've never said his name.
You know, you hear these stories and you wonder, there's no way these people are capable of doing something like that. At what point did you know it was him?
When he died.
2017.
Yeah.
So you didn't know till 2017.
But I knew a lot, but I didn't know that it was him.
So how did you know it was him when he died in 2017? Because that was just 7 years ago.
Immediately. I knew immediately. I just saw his face. And first of all, I saw his face and then immediately a lot of other memories came back with him.
How much time did you spend with him?
Well, I spent quite a lot of time with him in the beginning. So from 72 to 73, this training. So I spent quite a lot of time with him in the U.S. in that first month, in July of 1972, and spent time in his estate in Westchester, and also in his home in New York City, and also in his home in Maine. And on the way to Maine, on his sailboat, we stopped off at Rothschild, who had to give his permission for the persona that he wanted to make out of me. And then Rothschild invited me into the family. And I gave I had not been treated very well up until then. So suddenly I get a very nice invitation. I feel even this training, even though there was a lot of sex training also, just let's not make any mistakes here. This is not like I was just suddenly being treated really well. I was being trained sexually as well. But it was the best I'd ever seen in my life at age 9. And when I was invited,
Meaning treatment of elites, like lifestyle, wealth. Is that what you mean by treatment?
No, in the first 3 years in the network by Paul van den Boeynants, I was treated like absolute piece of dirt.
What does that mean?
I was the lowest of the low. He always treated me like, he wasn't worth the time for him to even have a chewing gum on his soul or something, and he just had to pull it off and just resented having to spend any time on me. But he was selling me all over, or whatever he was doing. He was using me for blackmail for people that were supposedly new, or he was giving me to depraved aristocrats. But he didn't want to, I was treated, most of the time I was treated like I was absolute piece of dirt, like I had no value at all.
Did he himself sexually abuse you or no, Paul?
He beat me up.
But not sexually abused you?
I did not get sexually abused by him. He was extremely sadistic. So he did not sexually abuse me. He abused other children, though. And I don't remember being sexually abused by him. But he and a few others that were in charge there just really would treat me like the lowest of the low. So I was used to sort of knowing that it was them, it was their fault. I knew that they treated me that way, but I know that I'm human. So I didn't really fully take it seriously. And I was kind of playing the game to survive, playing this game of whatever they needed me to do. I was doing it. And then in 1972, suddenly 3 years later, I got, treated as very special. And this treatment had a lot to do with the excitement that David Rockefeller felt over the fact that he loved being behind the scenes, creating this slave, this elite sex slave, who was going to make him millions. And I was already sold in the first year. In that year, till I gave my will to the Rothschild. And he asked specifically, will you be part of the family? And I said yes. And he asked me to say, I will give my will. And a year later, I did not give my will anymore. And that's why I'm here.
Why would Rockefeller do that if he's got billions at the time? That's a very powerful family.
He was a pedophile, first of all, and these families
Rothschild and David, or more David?
The Rothschild, I don't think, was a pedophile.
But David,
he was more powerful, but he was not a pedophile. David Rockefeller was a pedophile. There's a lot of survivors. I work with survivors. There are a lot of survivors out there of David Rockefeller, but I saw him in a certain light. And I've met one other person. Now that we named David Rockefeller, I can tell you that the place where I was taken in Germany, in Heidelberg, the doctor that was in charge there, Hans Harmsen, I have met another survivor that was also a special project of David Rockefeller. And Hans Harmsen, who was the doctor in charge there, she was there too as a special project of him, and she also came across Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen?
Hans Harmsen.
Harmsen.
Yes. There you go.
And who was he?
I think that he was in charge of the special project of David Rockefeller for the mind control training. And I know one other survivor who went through similar experiences as myself later on.
Did you ever meet him?
Meet him? Oh, yeah.
What was he like?
Horrendous.
Unpack it.
Okay. The way that you're trained in mind control training, it's based on torture. What I was used to doing as a child sex slave was to please men in some way or other, to get on their wavelength so that they wouldn't harm me, so that I could survive. With him, I never got anywhere. I never got through it at all. Most of these pedophiles you could get through in some way. There's some way in which, I could sense intuitively what I needed to do to please them. So with him, there was nothing that I could do to get through to him. It was just completely mean and vicious. And one thing that he would do is I was forced to watch certain things to learn about men's behavior, whether it was, their weakness or their sexual preferences or their sexual
desires,
perversions, their sexual perversions. So we're not talking about regular sexual. We're talking about sexual perversions, to recognize those. And so I was forced to watch the films. And first I would see the man in the behavior, just his face, and then seeing it in the behavior, different things. And then I would need to guess based on a face what this person would do. And if I got it wrong, one thing that he did is he would just strangle me until I fainted. And in the fainting...
He would?
Yeah, he would, yeah. And in the fainting, he liked to strangle. And in the fainting, I would realize after a while that in these near-death experiences that my intuition was sharpening. And so it was punishment for not giving the right answer, but it was also part of the training to be able to get more intuitive and sense things without having to use your reason. And one thing he did was he would strangle me, but first he would say, "Was bedeutet das?" What does this mean? And he would point at his own face, and then he would strangle me. And so his face to me means being strangled, or it did. That's how the programmation worked. So when I actually came across his photo, I felt like I was dying. And it took a long time. And I do a lot of yoga and meditation. And I had to really just go into the breathing and really, really just work through that programmation that seeing his face means you're going to die from strangulation. You're going to asphyxiate.
He wanted you to know that.
That is how programmation works in the network. That you know it, and your body has a reaction. And also, it is a way to get you from A to whatever they need you to go. So if this prompt means that, and that was in Heidelberg, he wasn't there all the time. Most of the time, there were 3 handlers that were doing this.
So if you go back to that, Rob, that says right there, he was a bureaucrat in the Nazi Germany. He was responsible for proving eugenic sterilization performed on the disabled. He supported forced sterilization of the mentally handicapped and helped to carry them out to Protestant intermission institutions for which he was responsible.
David Rockefeller also was a eugenicist.
You're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but the last 13 and a half years, I've been working on my first fiction book to write, ever. Fiction book to write. And while I finished this book, a year ago, I got the strangest phone call about one of the characters in the book where the guy wanted to meet with me, and he read the book. And afterwards, was like, wait a minute, am I the villain in the book? This is a story about a character named Asher, who is half Armenian, half Assyrian, whose father was involved in the Iranian Revolution, linked to Savak, working with the Shah, that they escape and he gets recruited to a secret society. Well, when you go to the secret society, it's been around for a couple thousand years. They've developed some of the craziest leaders of all time. And they test you. There's unique tests that they have at this society where they test to see your emotional mental toughness. One of the tests that they have is very rigorous. It's purely mental. Of course, there's a physical one, but one is mental and emotional. If you're Armenian, if you're Syrian, if you're Persian, this is a book you're going to be reading and saying, holy moly, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in here? Yes. If you're somebody that's fascinated by history, this is a book for you. Characters. There's a technology that this society, secret society, builds where you go into a vault. I won't spoil it for you. When you go down, they have a technology where you get to sit down and watch and have a 3-4 hour conversation with Tupac. You can set up a debate between Karl Marx and Ayn Rand. Karl Marx is in the book, who wrote Communist Manifesto. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, is in the book. Marilyn Monroe explains the concept of seduction and sex in the book. When you read the book, it's about development of the next leaders in the world and how they do it and how they've been doing it for many years. And it's also about how to prevent the end of civilization and how this organization goes about doing it. So, I've never written a parenting book before, but if I ever wrote a parenting book, this is the closest thing to it because it's all mindset, a lot of crazy stories. Again, 13 and a half years. Trust me, I told myself I will not publish this book until I sell my insurance company and I'm fully disconnected from it, where it's no longer my responsibility 100%. When you read this, if you're a creative person, if you like fiction books, if you enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, or if you enjoy Divergent, if you like books like that, I think you're gonna enjoy reading this book. It's the creative side. Business books is very easy. Here's how you do it. Here's how this how it works. This is very creative. If you haven't placed the order yet, now you can order it on Simon & Schuster, Amazon. I'm gonna put the link up below somewhere here, maybe even in my profile. Go order the book and read it. I've never written a book where I can't wait to read your reviews to see what you think about this book. So I'm going on this wild journey and we have some plans with this book here. If you support the things that I work on, I would appreciate you going and reading the book, order the book on Amazon, and then post a review. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.